I was recently running late to a flight. I never do this. I'm usually pretty early, and for some reason, I was very behind. And when I arrived to the airport, I got through, TSA, and I got in, and I realized I was actually in the wrong terminal. I had no idea this airport had two terminals, and so I had to get out and get back in line, and it was taking forever. And at one point in the TSA line, they call my name. Jake Crandall, you gotta your flight is leaving. And I actually looked at the TSA agent and I said, that's me. And she kind of gave me this look of like, I can't do anything about that. And which was unfortunate. But a couple people in front of me were very nice, let me, go ahead of them. And as I got through, I proceeded to run to my gate. And I realized very quickly that, my big lunch was a bad idea. And I may not be an Olympian. And and so I actually at one point I had to stop and like power walk because I think I was also very nervous to miss my flight. But fortunately, I made my flight, so that's a good news. I was the last one aboard the plane. But it reminded me the importance of breath. When you're out of breath, it's not fun. Sometimes you have to stop. Your body actually tells you that you need to stop doing what you're doing. And I'm reminded of Psalms 39:5 that says, "You made my life no longer than the width of my hand. My entire lifetime is just a moment to you. And at best, each of us is but a breath." That our time here on earth is like a breath. That it's passing, it's quick. 1 second's here and then 1 second's gone. A couple years ago, farther back than I realized, but I was actually present for the final breaths of my grandpa, who was like a father to me. I was part of the last couple months of his life in a big way, and I just happened to be in the room, and I think it was God's planning that me and a couple other family members were there, that at one point he was breathing, and then the next moment he wasn't, and he was no longer there. And if you've been part of that, it's a really powerful moment. And it also gets you thinking about, what's important in life. And one of the things that really struck me is this idea that, my neighbors, family members, coworkers, they all will one day take their final breath. And one thing that you see as somebody ages, especially at that season of life, that my grandfather was a very strong man. He was an engineer, moved his family from Iowa to California to start a new life. And the man I always knew was very strong, but at the end of his life, from hospital to hospice, he got very weak and very fragile. And it kind of really stood out to me that, one day I will be that even though I can feel strong, not when I'm running, but I only have so much time here, and I'm human and I need God. And I think about this idea of like Jesus when he's on the cross in Luke 23:34. He says this, he's been beaten up, flogged, he's gone through the ringer, he's being made fun of, he's literally about to die, and he says, Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they're doing." And how can Jesus in such a moment forgive those who are literally killing him? And I think it's because Jesus, outside of a lot of other things, has this perspective, as he even sees these strong people that are literally the Romans killing him, the Jews that are standing there saying all things, the crowd that is kind of, it's like the cancel culture sitting there just piling on, and he sees them as human. He sees them, in many different ways, but one of them, he sees them, what they're going to be like in their last breath. And I think it's a challenge that we need to love other people around us, not the way that we see them right now, but how God sees them. And one of the things I like to do is this tactic that they teach in therapy called grounding, that people who have panic attacks or stressful situations, you're supposed to ground yourself. So it kind of brings you back to reality. It's an exercise to kind of realign your priorities. And one of the things I like to do, or at least I'm trying to do, is this idea to remember that God created them and loves them. People that I have a hard time loving, the people that maybe bug me. Hurt people. So the idea is that if they are hurting me, understand like what pain is in their life to lead them to have to do this to me. And then what would Jesus do? And so this idea of seeing other people like in the idea that the way that God sees them, and see them as weak people. And ultimately we are challenged as followers of Jesus to have this perspective and take it one step further and invite them to church. So two practical things. I want you to practically ground yourself when someone's really bugging you, and try to see them the way Jesus sees them, and take that model from Luke 23. And then also just invite them to church. And two ways you can do that. You can invite them to attend church in person with you, make it an event, like you're going to get food and afterwards and hang out. Pick a message or a series that you think is going to really hit your neighbor or your coworker or your family member, right? The other thing is when you're in service and you're like, oh, I wish my brother or my neighbor heard this message, send them a link to the service. Go, hey, I was watching this and I think you should check it out. And technology is a great way to kind of introduce them to who Jesus is and what you believe. So I'm praying that you don't run out of breath this week and that you invite some people to a service coming up, or maybe send them to our online service. Thanks so much for checking out this devotion.